Welcome back to Kandid Konversations. Today, we're diving into the realities of brain injuries with someone whose story you may have already heard, Alex Becker. If the name sounds familiar, that's because her mother, Lynn Becker, joined us in our last episode to share the shocking journey of her daughter's concussions. Today, Alex shares her story with us. Alex is no stranger to concussions. She's had 5. As a young athlete, she faced the overwhelming challenges of an invisible injury. But her most recent concussion wasn't even sports related. After graduating from college just days before moving to New York City to start law school, Alex was riding an electric scooter when she was hit by a car. In this episode, Alex is opening up about her road to recovery, what worked, what didn't, and how she navigated everything while in law school during the COVID-19 pandemic. She's sharing what she wishes more people understood about brain injuries. Let's get into this shocking story on life after 5 concussions, Alex's resilience, and her road to recovery. Without further ado, here is today's Kandid Konversation.
I am joined by a very, very phenomenal woman, a success story in my eyes, if you will, Alex Becker. We were good enough to have her mother last week to tell her story as well as her sister's story. And so now we get to hear from Alex herself. We heard from your mom, but I would love to hear your perspective. Can you tell us about yourself, the injury, and how all of this got started?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm not sure exactly what part my mom focused on. I've had a couple different concussions throughout my life. The first one was when I was in the summer of 7th grade going into 8th grade. That summer I was at a Nike tennis camp. It was one of those days where it started raining. They put 400 campers inside on 4 courts. By some miracle, we made it through most of the day with no issue. It was literally the very last drill. They announced everybody pick up balls. The girl on the other side of the net from me decided to take one last serve. She had a killer serve and she fired it across the net. I had my racket full of balls and I was turning around to the net and it literally hit me square in the eye, knocked me unconscious. I went down, hit the back of my head, and then was unconscious for about 15 seconds or so. And then I woke up and they took me skating. So that was my very first concussion. I've had a couple subsequent ones from there, mostly from different just sports injuries, playing volleyball, diving for a ball, hitting my head the wrong way. My most recent concussion was a pretty bad one. That one was where I was a pedestrian. I was on an electric scooter in Atlanta heading to hot yoga the day before graduation from college. And a car was coming down a street, just didn't stop where he was supposed to, went right into the pedestrian crossway and just hit me. And so then I was knocked into oncoming traffic, also knocked unconscious. By some miracle, the doctor in the car that was driving towards me was the woman in the car driving towards me was a doctor. She jumped out, and when I came to, she was next to me.
Wow. Woo, okay, that story just gave me chills. Your mom did tell the tennis story, but your mom said that she wasn't really notified or it wasn't made out to
Yeah.
be a big deal. Obviously, they took you skating. Was this roller skating, ice skating?
Yep, it was roller skating. It was just like a 80s themed skate night sort of activity. They gave me some Advil, and I don't know, I can't remember if they called my mom at all. I know I texted my mom, and I was like, hey, I got hit in the eye, because she's big on eyes. So I know I texted her, and then she didn't realize at all how bad it was until she came to get me a couple days later, and I was tripping when I tried to walk because my depth perception was just completely gone.
Wow, which eye did the tennis ball hit you in?
The right eye.
Right eye. So what do you remember when you were coming out of it? Do you remember stars, headaches, like any immediate symptoms?
No stars, lots of headaches for sure. I definitely had some like bad, not full migraines, but definitely just like long periods of like pretty intense pain. The depth perception, that was the big thing where I literally just suddenly I couldn't function in the same way anymore. And I was trying to play tennis and suddenly I like couldn't even see where the ball was in the air relative to my racket. So it was very jarring. And then, a couple of days later, my mom came and got me. We drove home and I was walking into our house. There are no stairs to get into the house I grew up in. And I tripped. Like I couldn't even walk into my own home that I'd walked, thousands of times, if not a million. So that was definitely the most startling part. And then honestly, the concussion wasn't really on our radar. We were just so concerned about the eye because I went to an ocular specialist once I did get home and he told me my ocular pressure was like super low. Like I was at risk for detached retina low.
Wow.
So that was obviously like the bigger concern in that moment.
I can imagine. I mean, your vision. So your mom, she described when she drove you home that just the ride home was super intense and that there was, um, I believe she said you were crying or holding your head or the sides, of your face just in pain from, maybe she said it was raining. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. No, it could very well have happened.
Okay, okay. I wonder, I think she said that it was you. I don't think she said it was your sister. Alex also has a sister who also has experience with concussion. So, did you have support or advice for your sister when she was going through the same?
I certainly tried to, but honestly, Natalie's case was a lot different than mine. She had one incredibly bad concussion. And well, I mean, she probably had one when she was little when she ran into a tree. But then subsequent to that, she had this one incredibly intense one. And for me, I mean, it was just very different. Like I never had to take time truly off. Like I could sort of like muster through all of them. And that wasn't an option for her. And it was actually really difficult for me to understand that for a long time.
Good to know. Okay. So you're going through these symptoms. Your mom was saying that, like you said, it wasn't really on the radar. And she, kind of excused things away. She was like, well, maybe she's just, a little moody, being a teenager. And then she explained away the migraines and was like, well, that kind of runs in the family. And so they weren't really tying it to the concussion. Were there any other symptoms that you were experiencing that your mom saw or that you noticed and didn't even mention or that came to light afterwards where you're like, oh man, this is probably because of the concussion?
I think the only other one is just that I have like these floaters in my vision on my right eye now. I had them immediately following the accident and they've just never gone away. There's just these three little dots that are just like right off center of my vision. Um, and so that, but otherwise, like, honestly, it was so long ago. I feel like those were definitely the big things. It's tough for me to remember much else.
Understood. Okay. Could you share any kind of symptoms that may have been exacerbated when you were concussed again?
Oh, sure. Um, so I've had about 5 concussions in my life. So first one was 7th grade. My sophomore year of high school, I got hit in the head, or I was diving for a ball, hit it the first time. Later in the season, a girl
Which
went up,
sport?
volleyball. So playing volleyball, dove for the ball, hit my head on the ground and just hit the back of my head, got a pretty small, relatively speaking, concussion from that. Then later half of that season, a girl who both of her parents were Olympic rowers went up to hit a ball and she just rocked. She just hit it wrong and just rocked me in the head during warm-ups one day. Um, and that one gave me another like slight concussion in the same season. So that was 3. My senior year, I was just laughing and I threw my head back and I slammed the back of my head like into a little like ledge thing, and I had a really bad concussion after that one. After that concussion, that was the first time where I genuinely felt like the concussion impacted me in a very tangible way. For the first time, I would be sitting in an English class, reading the passage that we're supposed to be talking about, and I literally couldn't understand the words on the page. And I didn't know what was happening to me. Because the one thing that had never failed me in my whole life was my brain, and suddenly it wasn't working, and I didn't know what to do. And it was very scary. And I also remember, so that happened in senior spring. I was heading to Emory that fall. Before originally I was pre-med, lawyer now, so that didn't work out. But, part of like the pre-med program is you have to do this. I think it was it was either a bio or I think it was a chemistry, like either a placement test or like an intro sort of course thing. And I remember like it was probably 2.5, maybe 3 months after the concussion my senior year. Finally, my brain it just felt like it started working again. And like just out of nowhere, I was like, oh my God, it's working. Like it's back. Like it was the most joyous feeling in the world. But it was really scary when I just like, reading a page would exhaust me, or like it would literally cause me to have pain in my head to try and comprehend the words on a page. It was one of the most startling experiences. So that was 4. The 5th one was the car accident that I told you about, that happened in Atlanta. That one was a doozy. That one caused a lot of physical symptoms. So I basically could not travel in any way, shape, or form for 3 years without violently throwing up. Yeah. So the timeline was I got hit on a Saturday in Atlanta. I graduated that Monday. I was already headed to law school in New York City. However, the law school I chose to attend offers a program where you can do the first year of law school over 3 semesters instead of 2. I was really nervous about the workload, so I had opted for that program ahead of time, which meant I was going to be starting law school the Thursday after I graduated from college. So like Monday I graduate, Tuesday I drive home to Charleston, Wednesday I fly to New York, Thursday I start law school. And I was okay with that plan until the universe sent a car to hit me. And suddenly I had to decide whether or not I was going to be going through law school that semester starting with a concussion, or if I was going to defer perhaps to the fall, just do a regular course load, etc. That one, thankfully, like it didn't feel like my brain broke in the same way that the 4th one had done, but instead I literally could not get on a bus, car, or subway without physically throwing up. And I was living in New York City, 2 miles from campus, and I walked to and from school every single day for the entire first year until COVID hit, and then we went online. It got way worse if I tried to fly or had to do like an extended period of travel. I remember the first time I tried to fly, I think I was down for like 2 days of just like basically nonstop vomiting.
Long post concussion when you took that flight?
That would have been like the holidays. So I got hit in the spring, so that would have been about 6 months later or so. But then 3 years later, in 2022, I was flying to Prague with my law school for an arbitration competition. And I was like, okay, I'm 3 years out. I can do trains, I can do buses, I can do cars, I can do short domestic flights. Like, I'm going to try. Like, it's a free trip. And I also, like, I'm excited to like have this opportunity. So I went, we do the first like day and a half of the competition, and then I just go down bad, and I end up having to go to the hospital in Prague after almost 24 hours of like nonstop vomiting. So my friend Sam took me, and she has a really funny photo of me there. They honestly, shout out European healthcare. The whole trip to the ER cost me less than my per diem, so they really know what's up. But they got me square, and I got back on the plane. Since then, I have been able to do international travel. The following year, so 2023, I had a shorter trip. I flew to the Azores, which is a collection of islands off the coast of Portugal. And I did not end up in the hospital with that trip.
Good. Now, I know your mom, so I could only imagine her concern when you're saying, I'm going on these international trips. Was she,
Yeah,
was she voicing her concern about that?
not like so much. I think she was mostly just like excited for me to have the opportunity. I think she knows me well enough to know that it didn't really matter what she said. If she had voiced the concerns, it would have just pushed me harder in that direction.
Oh, daughters and mothers.
It is what it
Um,
is.
it is what it is. Can you tell me about your road to recovery? What you remember of that?
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna focus on like the two most recent ones,
Yes.
just because closest to the mind. So road to recovery for the fourth concussion, which was the senior year of high school, where I smashed the back of my head. That one, there wasn't like a whole lot of a plan for my recovery in that one. I reduced my course load. Like my school had a phenomenal, my high school, shout out Andover, they had a phenomenal response even back in 2014, and 2015 to concussions. Like their concussion protocol was amazing. Um, they instantly allowed you to drop down course load if needed. You had automatic extensions on all of your assignments. They very much worked with you. Like you had access to what we would call the sleep room, which was just a dark room in the infirmary that you could go to if you just like needed that downtime. Um, there was also, like there was a whole like nursing staff on campus for addressing any like physical symptoms that came up. I didn't have really any physical symptoms with that one though.
But you
So
still
that,
had your floaters, correct?
yeah, but the floaters were that I was just so used to them. Like the floaters truly after about a year, they were always there. Like I can see them now if I focus, but outside of trying to see them, they're just like a wash in my vision.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but with that one, I reduced my course load. I know that like I definitely slowed down on some of my assignments, but there wasn't like a true plan for recovery. I was just kind of waiting and seeing when it would get better. Contrast that to my most recent one. Very different approach. This is obviously post my mom starting her company, going through everything with my sister, having a lot to work with. Okay. So following my most recent concussion, which is the concussion where I was hit by a car as a pedestrian, that one instantly, my mom was like, okay, we're doing upper cervical chiropractic care. We have to do vision therapy and we need to do vestibular therapy. And then I also needed to do physical therapy because I had some shoulder stuff from getting hit. Um, and my recovery, it's tough to compare just because the concussions themselves were so different in terms of like how they impacted me. But I have to imagine my most recent concussion would have been significantly worse without that treatment plan in place. Just from like the traveling perspective alone, like I noticed a difference immediately in my ability to withstand any time on the subway after having an adjustment with the upper cervical chiropractor. And the upper cervical chiropractor is actually something we discovered during my senior year of college. I thought it was total crap. I really did not believe it was going to work at all. I was sitting in the office with my mom. It was my birthday. I was like, this is not where I want to be on my birthday. Like, this man is blowing smoke. Like, this is not going to be true. And I ate my words so fast. He made one adjustment and it literally felt like cold water was running down the right side of my spine for the first time in my life. Like, it was the weirdest sensation ever. I had to eat all of my words. It really sucked, but it's okay because it fixed me. So fast forward, we already knew that upper cervical chiropractic care is something that I responded really well to. And coupling that with the fact that with the treatment plan my sister had been on during my senior year of college, she had been seeing an eye doctor. Sorry, I'm answering your question in a really roundabout way, but just stick
It's
with me.
totally fine. Yes, please.
Okay.
I am engaged.
Okay. So my sister had been seeing this eye doctor, and the eye doctor had been doing a series of different like treatment plans with my sister. My sister started doing upper cervical chiropractic care without telling the eye doctor that she had started this. She went back to see the eye doctor after 2 sessions of upper cervical care, and the eye doctor said, I don't know what you changed. Keep doing it. It's working. Like, it's working. So we were confident that the upper cervical care, like, despite the fact that my spine had just been very messed up and it was going to help that, like, it would probably also benefit whatever other therapies we could get going at the same time. From there, because of like my very first concussion with the depth perception and like balance issues and everything else, we thought vestibular therapy was going to be the best therapy to start with. And I didn't have the time to do all therapies at once, just given the law school demands and the fact that I was really concussed, living in a new city, trying to navigate all of that, right? So we started with physical therapy, vestibular therapy, and upper cervical care, which I continue doing to this day. The vestibular therapy was definitely helpful, just in the sense that, like, when I started it, I literally couldn't shake my head for a minute straight without like stumbling and like getting like very dizzy, and I think nauseous, if I'm not mistaken. Fast forward to like the end of vestibular therapy, I could do all sorts of like crazy things while shaking my head and like jumping up and down, whatever else. And so it really did help me be able to withstand at least some level of like jostling. My upper cervical chiropractor is also very deep in Brooklyn. I live in Manhattan, so it's about 45 minutes each way on the subway. So I did have to like find a way to get on the subway at least every other week to be able to get that care. So the vestibular therapy was like key in allowing me to just have like that isolated occurrence every 2 weeks of going out to Brooklyn and back in. I will also say going out to Brooklyn was so much harder than coming back in. Post adjustment, coming back to Manhattan, much easier train ride. And I had a lot fewer, at least immediate symptoms that I was feeling when I got off the subway. Then I found my eye doctor. He was really a game changer for me. So he was sort of like a holistic ocular therapist guy. Sweetest man in the world. He was in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. And he did like a combination of color therapy, which is where you stare at different colored light bulbs. And they each impact you in very different ways. Again, I was like, this feels like it could be crap, until he sat me down in front of the stupid lights, and suddenly like I was feeling things change. And I was like, what is this voodoo? So he was phenomenal, and he and I had to do a lot of work to work on my convergence and divergence. Basically, that had just like broken in me. And so whenever I would be reading text, in particular on a screen, it would basically, like, the only way I can describe it is the text would start zooming away from my face. That's how it felt. It would just start zooming away from my face. And like, the only way that I could get it to come back into like genuine focus is by physically touching the screen and like showing my eye where in space the words actually were. So he was helping me to try to fix that, because obviously, being a lawyer, I do a lot of reading, and that is a key, and on a screen. So being able to do that successfully is very important, and without causing pain. So he was really incredible, and he gave me some great exercises, the light therapy. Then we would do these exercises where I would stare at these like letter boards basically that had different images on them. And there would be 2 images, and he would say, make 3. And I'd look at him like he was crazy. I was like, what do you mean make 3? Do you want me to draw it? Like, what are you talking about? But instead you have to have your eyes work together to like shift focus in a way that you produce a 3rd image. And so we worked on that skill and strengthening that bundle of like neuro pathways. And that was a big game changer for me.
Wow, that sounds phenomenal. I admittedly am on the changed mindset train for chiropractics as well. I had a not great experience with a chiropractor, but more recently last year I started chiropractics again, and just learning about, I think having the chiropractor explain what was taking place and how those the nerves in your spine, how they have a direct correlation to your brain and your function and all of that. So
Yeah.
when you were saying that, I was like, oh, I totally relate.
Yeah.
So I am biased because I am a speech therapist. So I want to know, did you work with a speech therapist at all during any of your recovery? And were there any cognitive symptoms that were debilitating for you, like memory or word finding or sequencing, problem solving, anything?
So, taking your first question, I did not work with a speech therapist, but one of my friends actually asked me if I would think about it because I have been told I mumble very, very badly, and that is not a comment that I started getting until after the most recent concussion. The other thing that cognitively I noticed, I like, how do I describe this? It's not dyslexia, but it's like I flip letters when I'm speaking. So instead of fuzzy sheep, I'll say like suzzy feet. And in my head, I know exactly what I mean, but it sounds like gibberish. And then E's and U's and B's and D's, when I'm writing, I flip them all the time, like typing. Yeah. So obviously writing emails as a lawyer, I am double checking for spelling mistakes like extra hard. And that's something that I obviously still deal with today. To your second question sorry, what was your second question?
Second question was, were there any additional symptoms like with your cognition?
Yeah, that was mostly in terms of like cognition. Word finding was okay. It was actually shockingly okay, especially like in the dense legal textbooks. I don't know if it was just that like I was a very diligent highlighter and I had a formula and I stuck to that formula, and maybe that's just what saved my butt. But that wasn't too bad for me. Short-term memory was a little bit tough for like the first month, maybe like 6 weeks or so. And then I would say like the biggest impact actually was like long-term focus. Any class that was like over an hour and a half, or if I tried to do work for more than an hour and a half straight, oh my God, it would become pointless. I would be sitting there taking far too long to get through whatever passage I was looking at or what it was actually like work to me. And it was a lot more beneficial for me to walk away for half an hour, give myself a break, and then come back.
Okay. All right. Did you have any accommodations at your university?
My law school did not give me any extra time actually on my first set of exams, despite my neurologist recommending it, which I was pretty upset about.
Yeah,
It
but
worked out.
you're a lawyer.
It
You're
worked
still
out.
a lawyer. Yes. How was wrapping up the recovery portion, did you use power of patience for anything?
For the most recent one, I was sort of like the guinea pig for power of patience. So before it was truly live, my mom was beta testing it on me. And she was like, okay, can you try this? Can you try this? And I was like, this is really overwhelming. I can handle like 3 symptoms at most. And now we have a 3 symptom like baseline for power of patience.
Thanks to Alex.
She and I, through a series of sometimes heated exchanges, did craft the power of patience that you now see today. I helped her a little bit with my sister as well, helped her with figuring out various symptoms that we both struggled with and that we felt like impacted us during our various concussions that could be useful for someone to like think about when they are just like putting together their own tracker. I mentioned the 3 limit was a product of me getting overwhelmed one day with my mom. The other big thing that I recommended was initially you could only check in like once a day. And I was like, no, 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 no. I am changing all throughout the day. I need to be able to log this whenever something is moving. And you can do that as well now.
Well, I have to say my patience, thank you, because I received the feedback of It's just so much. I don't know how I can track all of this. And so to be able to remove symptoms or pause them, I will tip my hat and say thank you. My patients
Oh,
really
good.
appreciate that.
It's overwhelming. It
It is.
is. Yeah,
It
I
is.
totally get it. You're like, I can't, you're like, I'm literally broken. How am I supposed to be doing all of this too?
Yes. Because of you, there are less tears because of that setting. So thank you very much for the exchange and for helping to create this amazing tracking tool. I would like to know, how did this play a role on just your mental health? That's a lot to go through.
Yeah, so I'm the sort of person where I definitely like to just throw myself into work. That's a little bit easier for me than necessarily unpacking what I might be feeling or anything else. So it was like a weird blessing in disguise that I was starting law school, which is obviously a very rigorous process. Um, and it was a lot easier for me to just like super focus on that and be almost OCD with my studies rather than thinking about a lot of like what I felt like I had was suddenly like taken away from me. Um, I mentioned like I was walking to and from like 2 miles to and from school every single day because I couldn't handle getting on the subway without getting sick. And like I don't know, like I think I think you just kind of have to find a way to like not view it as a negative. So like for me, I would find some music and like that was suddenly like that was my time. And sometimes when it was like really cold, my time was less pleasant. But like I had to just view it as my time. I couldn't see it as like everything I was losing. Like in my head, like, you know what? I got my steps in today. Like that's something. Like I can appreciate that. And maybe I skip the gym and I don't feel that bad about it. And that's okay. So that's just sort of like the mindset shift that I had to do. Um, COVID was a funny, complicating factor in all of this.
Well,
So COVID hit about 10 or 8 or 10 months after I had been injured. I think 8 months after I had been injured. COVID hit. And suddenly I was forced to be on screen all the time, which was like the worst thing for me. And to be clear, prior to COVID, in my law school classes, I did not use a computer basically. I had it with me just in case I needed to look something up, but I did not open it. I was a notebook and pencil, textbook next to me because I literally could not handle the screen time that much. Um, that being said, we then shifted everything online and isolated ourselves for so long. Um, I would say that impacted me just like everybody else, where I found myself, day 18 of my isolation in my tiny Chinatown, New York City apartment, going kind of crazy. And I think it was sort of impossible not to. I remember I had a vestibular therapy appointment the first week after COVID had started, and she logged on, and I was throwing up like as she logged on because I was so like I was having so many I don't know what it's called, but like so much reactivity to the screen time.
wow.
Um, so that was like jarring and definitely a change. Um, but then like I just kind of had to take a mindset shift of like I ended up like so bad at one point in terms of just like where I was with the vestibular therapies, trying to do that, trying to start ocular therapy, trying to finish up physical therapy, and then keep up with my law school studies. So I was like, you know what? Thank God I don't have to go to and from school. Like, who would have the time in the day to do anything? So I feel like I just sort of got through it with those mindset shifts. Like that was how I sort of approached it. And now I have a great therapist. Probably should have had a therapist the whole time, but I was a broke law student, so such is life.
Such is life, such is life. Okay, so you were talking about music. Was there any kind of music that helped with the walk and you getting into that mindset, or was there music that you were like, this is not something I can listen to when I'm experiencing symptoms?
No, it was, I'm just sort of like either like country, I'm from South Carolina, or like pop 40. Uh, those tend to be what I gravitate towards. I didn't like, I know some people are really sensitive to certain types of sounds. I didn't really have any of that reactivity.
Oh, good.
Um, so yeah, I would just sort of listen to anything. I will say, I could not listen to podcasts only in the sense that I wouldn't listen. Like it would just be noise. Like I couldn't comprehend it, which was kind of weird. And I don't know if it was just me not listening or it was just like a weird recovery thing. Because now I listen to podcasts all the time.
Good, good. Well, hopefully you'll listen to your episode and your mom's episode. So how did your concussions affect relationships, friendships?
Yeah, it can be a strain. So my concussions, I'm gonna take the most recent one, the car accident one. So I was in a relationship when I got hit, and like the very initial outset was definitely a struggle. Um, for him to comprehend one, just like I think the level of injury and like how deeply it impacted me and just like every single facet of life, was just like not something that was super comprehensible for, I mean, any average person, right? Especially someone who like has seen you go from playing all of the sports, traveling on a whim to Paris and London to suddenly being like, no, I can't get on the subway. It's a jarring, sometimes confusing transition. So it was definitely like a growing pain stage for a few months while I figured out my own boundaries, because that was the other complicating factor, is that I didn't actually know my boundaries for many activities until it was too late and I was having a really bad reaction. Um, he got really good at bringing me Gatorade and puke bags. And we made it for a number of years after that. We are no longer together for different reasons. But during it, like learning how to communicate with each other effectively was difficult. Learning how to regulate my emotions and separate them from what my actual feelings towards him were outside of the injury, very difficult. Um,
Meaning
and then
things might agitate you that didn't before, or what do you mean by that?
yeah, just like I would have reactivity to either like statements or I would, just like have a stronger emotional response than even I was used to. And I'm like, wait, like even, and then I would get confused and then I would get frustrated at the confusion. And then, that just makes a more tense environment, which makes communication more difficult and it makes it harder for you to communicate your actual needs rather than just what you're feeling in that moment. Um, so yeah, all of that it was definitely just like growing pains. And then with regards to my family, um, I, it was like simultaneously, like I wanted my mom to stop telling me what to do because I was an adult and I was going to law school and good Lord, give me some space. While also recognizing that she was just trying to help and that she had literally just done this with my sister and she did have a wealth of knowledge to rely upon. I don't think that was the injury. I think that's probably more just like mother-daughter dynamics in general. But I will say, like when I would be on the phone with her talking, short-tempered, like I did not have the patience for a lot of questions about my various symptoms. I was like, you have like 3 questions and then I'm pretty much at my limit. Like I'm done talking about this. Like it already consumes all of my life. Please don't let it consume my conversations too. And that was sort of, I would say that actually was definitely like a prominent pain point in the relationship while I was in like the thick of the symptoms.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. What advice would you give to people interacting with someone with a concussion? What is something that you wish people would have known, or just what advice would you give to someone who's going to interact?
Yeah, great question. So interacting with someone who has a concussion, I would first keep in mind that no two concussions are the same. So whatever your preconceptions are for a concussion, I would encourage you to set those aside and instead just like let that person tell you what their limitations, abilities, and etc. are. Because truly, like, no two are the same. No two of mine have been the same, let alone like me and my sisters. And despite having really similar rigorous treatment plans from my mom, right? And so I would ask people to first and foremost just like remember that whatever your experience has been with a concussion or whatever your known experience is with someone who maybe you love who's had a concussion, it's not the same as the person who you're talking to in this moment. And to just like listen and be okay with the fact that they might have a different experience, and it doesn't make yours wrong. Yours is still just as valid. Theirs is just different.
Good insight. What do you wish you would have known prior to your experience with concussion?
Oh, what do I wish I would have known? I mean, the easy answer would be to like tell myself it will be okay. I think perhaps a better answer would be to like value the time when your brain does work because it can be taken away.
Great advice. All right. Lastly, with the wishes, what do you wish your doctors, or medical professionals that you worked with, what do you wish about that experience if you could change something about it?
I had a really wonderful experience with all of my providers. My neurologist was phenomenal. I told him from the outset, like, I really didn't want to do any sort of drugs. Like, I'd rather take a more natural approach wherever possible. He immediately was like, absolutely, here are all of these vitamins we're going to start you on. They're completely normal vitamins. Like, it's nothing crazy. It's CoQ10. It's just good things for you. And it helped. And it was working. And we saw improvements. There was no pushback. There was no like pressuring me to go in like a different direction that I was uncomfortable with. And he also was not critical of the fact that I was seeking alternative care through upper cervical chiropractic care or vestibular therapy or anything else. He was very respectful of the fact that like it worked for me. My results were getting better. So who cares? Like if it's all going well and it's all checking the boxes, like fantastic, let's keep doing it. So I had a really wonderful experience with him. I had a wonderful experience with my ocular therapist, my upper cervical chiropractor. I still see not all the time. It's just like every couple months these days, but like he's phenomenal. So like honestly, like I feel like I really lucked out with the medical system in my case. I feel like my doctors listened to me, and they were just willing to work with me and like with what I wanted my care plan to look like. I guess what I would say in general to people who are looking to find a doctor, be so incredibly selfish. Go talk to at least 3 and just like see what you feel when you're talking to each of them and trust that feeling. Because at the end of the day, it's your care and you want someone who's going to make you feel confident and like secure, not make you second guess everything and go against what feels natural and right. At the end of the day, like you know yourself a lot better than they ever will.
One advice. And yes, that is very true. You know yourself better than anybody else. Advocate for yourself. I tell that to listeners and my patients all the time. Advocate for yourself. Doctors don't know everything. And like you said, no concussion is alike. So I always recommend advocate for yourself. So I agree with you there. Okay, we're going to shake it up a little bit and do what I think is a fun part of the podcast. We're going to do the Kandid questionnaire. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions that are just fun and random to help listeners learn a little bit more. So the first question is, what is one word your friends would use to describe you?
Straightforward.
Okay. Well, I think that's pretty perfect for an attorney.
Yes.
Second question, if you could instantly master any sport or physical skill, what would it be and why?
Singing. I have always said that I would trade most of my athletic ability to be able to sing because it's just like that fun skill that you can bring out at parties and talent shows. And it's a lot harder to like play volleyball for a talent show.
Which you are apparently very skilled at, and tennis. What is your go-to karaoke song? This is an impromptu question.
Yeah, I'm such a bad singer. I won't do karaoke. Like, oh, my internet's unstable. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But yeah, like I just won't do it. Like I'm so bad. You don't understand.
Really trade for that skill. Okay, got it. Third question, what one activity or hobby you find most relaxing or beneficial for your brain?
Oh, I love artistic activities where you can just sort of like turn your brain off a little bit and just be creative. In particular, watercolors and just like molding clay, just like the air dry molding clay. I think those are really fun.
Okay, did you do a lot of those over the years?
No, it's actually been a more recent hobby that I picked up, and I wish I had like gotten into it more during recovery. I think it would have been a really nice outlet to have as just like an alternative to either screen time or being outside, because sometimes that can just be too much.
Understood. Okay, what is the weirdest or most unexpected item in your bag or car right now?
I don't have a car, so it's gonna be a bag.
I was thinking
Um,
New York, she might not have a car.
I don't even know if this is weird, but I have these little like instant bone broth packets. I just kind of keep those on me just in case.
Just in case, need some bone broth. Okay. And lastly, what is your go-to guilty pleasure, either TV show, movie, or song?
Mm, Probably America's Next Top Model. That
Okay,
was that
very
was my whole
cool.
childhood. My whole childhood.
How is well, I would think, do you get to see anything like Fashion Week or anything with modeling in New York?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was just Fashion Week last week actually. I did not attend anything, but there are a number of events going on, and I was seeing group chats blowing up left and right about like either parties that we could go to and all sorts of things, but my work schedule doesn't always allow for such items.
Got it. Got it. Well, I'm glad that you're able to manage your work schedule with all things considered. It seems like you are thriving in your day to day now. So I'm very, very happy about that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I it's pretty crazy like the difference that a couple of years can make for sure.
yeah. Time helps with that healing.
Yeah.
But also you did the work to actually focus and do what you needed to do with your recovery. So I think that has a big part of it. There are some cases where people will just push past and not worry about that. And then their symptoms are exacerbated and recovery takes longer. So I'm glad to have a guest to share, if you do the work, your due diligence, there is happiness and recovery on the other side. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, and hopefully things just continue to get better. No more concussions. Watch those crosswalks. Cars stay away. But thank you so much for your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to Candid Conversations with Dr. Kelly. I hope today's discussion left you inspired, informed, and ready to take on your next challenge with a clearer mind. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep striving for a healthier mind and a happier life. I'm Dr. Kelly, and this has been another Candid Conversation.